To kick it off, if you didn't already know, this is the very first AIOps Power Hour session of a series of 3 webinars that we'll be hosting over February. The other 2 will be on February 26th and also February 19th. Do not ask why I named them in the opposite order, but those are the other dates that there will be. Today's topic will be how you can reduce incidents with event management, focusing on how you can do it specifically with ServiceNow. And we have some wonderful presenters today who are part of the ITOM Center of Excellence, and that includes David Deitch and Carlos Peterson. And they will be introducing themselves a bit more later on. And I hope you look forward to their presentations later today. And also, speaking right now, my name is Victoria Lowe. You may have recognized me from past webinars that I've hosted on Live on ServiceNow, and I am one of the outbound product managers for ITOM AIOps. So nice to meet you if I haven't already met you before on these webinars. And as always, I recognize many of your names, so thank you for coming back. So you know the drill. Safe harbor notice for any forward-looking statements we may make. This presentation potentially could contain some forward-looking statements, and the statements that we're making today are to the best of our current knowledge, but things are always subject to change, so please keep that in mind. And this webinar is hosted with Live on ServiceNow, a wonderful team that we have at ServiceNow. And if you'd like to sign up for more of the ITOM webinars in the future, and also get access to the recording of this session after this is done in about a week, then you can access all that information in the 2 links that I've just pasted in the chat right now. So again, if you'd like to sign up for the other ITOM webinars that we have and access the recording, you can see those links in the chat right now. And for the very first poll question of today, because I also just kind of alluded to it, I wanted to see how many of you have actually signed up for the webinars that we have coming up that are going to be part of the AIOps Power Hour. So again, we have 2 other sessions coming up, one covering monitoring and Gen AI with event management. We'll also be talking about some distributed teams capabilities we have, as well as our session on the 26th will be covering reducing outages with health log analytics. And they will also be covered by the amazing ITOM COE, but different people, not the exact same people today, but other members of the same team. So in the case where you have not yet signed up for these webinars, and I urge you to, you can use the link in the chat that I put in just a few seconds ago, but I will also repaste it in case someone just joined the call as well. So again, sign up for all the webinars and maybe see you in the next 2 weeks as well. So before we get started, just some housekeeping. We saved a lot of time at the end for some live Q&A, about 30 minutes. This entire session will be about 90 minutes long, approximately 60 minutes of presentation, then 30 minutes saved for live Q&A. So please put any questions that you have in the Q&A module in Zoom. But if you have any questions towards the end, we'll be more than happy to also answer them live as well. And the session will also be recorded and shared on the ServiceNow community. Again, I posted the webinar recording blog post where it'll be posted later in about a week. I'll post it again just in case anyone may have missed it. And then after the event, there is also a post-event survey. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, we'd also really appreciate that. And for the agenda today, the topics that we'll be covering is how you can reduce work or incidents with AIOps. Sorry, okay, sorry. I got confused for a second. Yeah, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, the AIOps outcome demo, which will also be run by David. And then we'll have Carlos come in with a deep dive on how to achieve your various AIOps goals and how to set it up within ServiceNow itself. And he'll also have a demo as well. And then, like I mentioned, we'll have our live Q&A. And now I'll hand it over to David.
Thanks, Victoria. I probably met some of the people on the call today. I'm sure there's many that I haven't. My name is David Deitch. I've been with ServiceNow for 5 years now. I'm in our ITOM Center of Excellence. My background before ServiceNow was in distributed infrastructure and networking. So when I got to ServiceNow and started learning the platform here, I was really drawn to ITOM and event management and figuring stuff out in this area. So we'll get started with our first poll question. Um, you know, related to the topic today, do we understand how event management process on ServiceNow can actually help you reduce the incident? I'm watching the results come in fairly live. We're at like a 60% saying they understand, 40% either no or not sure. So yeah, please keep answering. Well, we're going to come back and ask a similar question in about 20 minutes. I like to start off with a lot of definitions. I'm not a big slide person, but it's always important that I'm speaking in words that everybody understands. Event management in ServiceNow comes in our professional level ITOM SKU, ITOM operator professional, or newly renamed ITOM AIOps professional. When we start adding plus, that's when we add in AI agents and Now Assist. If we go to enterprise, we start adding in HLA functionality and things like that. But our event management functionality is generally considered to be within our professional level of ITOM. Different way to look at our ITOM SKUs. Sorry, the poll keeps popping back up into my main screen. I don't think everyone can see it, but let me exit instead of move it. Okay. Again, ITOM Health contains event management. That's in ITOM AIOps Professional. Different colored bubbles. Normally I like to check in, but please ask questions. If this isn't clear where our functionality lies, we'll try to explain that to you because it's super important to know what you have, what you don't have, where you can add, what you can start using today. As we talk about a journey with ITOM, we've probably seen these slides before. When we start to do event management, we're somewhere between levels 2 and 3. We're no longer responding to events. We're actually taking intelligence and wrapping that around those events. We're then able to put some context and start predicting those problems and start reducing our time to resolution. Have less incidents because not every event becomes an incident. We put them together. So with that, let's understand how we put all of this together and build this foundation. But there's 2 ways to approach it, one with a CMDB and one without. And as we build the CMDB, we're going to do better event management. But I just want to understand from the audience I'm talking, how confident are we in CMDB? I'm glad nobody has yet said what's a CMDB. So that's good. I definitely have about 10% of people saying not at all. So like there's definitely different levels of confidence. Just because your CMDB is not something you're confident in doesn't mean you cannot do event management on ServiceNow. I want to break down why that's possible. So when I look at how ServiceNow understands an enterprise, I think of 3 different categories. I think of the objects that exist. I think of how those objects group and provide business functions, giving them context. And then I talk about the state of those objects. And that's red-green. Is it up or down? I did get one, what's a CMDB? I think I can share these results out and let everybody see. So, and in different parts of ITOM, we're able to build these 3 different types of awareness. At the end of the day, we're a platform, and all of the processes connect together. And we can do everything better if we help in different parts of our business. So if we do operations management events and lead into support, we can do better support for our customers and for our users. And that's event management leading to a reduction in incidents. We can drive many different outcomes. Again, we're up here driving stateful outcomes. Either without a CMDB directly, or because we built a CMDB that understands what we have, we understand the business context, and now we have more things to correlate against. If we haven't built the CMDB yet, we journey backwards. We start with using the information we know from the alerts to reduce incidents, and then we do better as we build our data foundation. So all of this conceptually comes together in ServiceNow under ServiceNow Service Operations. That's where we bring ITOM operations, ITSM or CSM, or industry versions of CSM for service, and automation from the platform. Machine learning, AI agents, big data, to get those events down. Events are noisy, and we want to get the minimum amount of incidents possible to provide the best service possible. It's combining the functions of operations and service into service operations to provide the best user and customer experiences. So this poll, few options. How do you convert events, alerts, alarms from operations into actionable work? Incidents on ServiceNow. The three options there, already using ServiceNow, creating those incidents directly. I have a lot of my customers that they have a tool like Logic Monitor or Science Logic or SolarWinds, and they just create incidents for every notification from those. And then we also have some layered where there's a different AIOps tool in there. And so, Victoria, if you want to share these out when they're done, just so everybody can see kind of the different estate from their peers, I think that's always fair. And then a little bit of a second version of this question. How do we do alert correlation today? So, and the difference here is, even if I'm creating an incident directly from my monitoring tool, sometimes that monitoring tool is doing some sort of correlation, and other times it's just plopping a ticket in for each event, alert, alarm that we have. Definitely a big mix. The two most popular are about 40% at ServiceNow AIOps and another 40% at the monitoring tool level. We have some very creative people using their imagination. That's how I used to do it. And a number of I don'ts as well. So really easily able to, for those I don'ts, add functionality and possibly achieve these great outcomes. All right. I promise I'm almost done with these slides. Conceptually, on ServiceNow, our service processes, are over here. Incidents and cases. Our operations artifacts are here. And so when we add in the event management process, we are now, instead of coming directly into incidents, we're starting our process at ServiceNow over here. We have the opportunity to not create an alert for every event. We can say we need 3 ping response times to be low before we create our first alert. And that the 4th, 5th, 6th in perpetuity should always associate with that same alert. So we get reduction there. Once we have our alerts, we then want to group them together. So if we had 100 events down to 10 alerts, and now we can take those 10 alerts and say the response time's low, and everything that has the response time that's low happens to be in the same location, the same physical rack. We might have a rule set to group that together based on that rack location because it's a top of rack switch or something. And then we create one incident. I see a hand raise. I'm going to go creative. And Anne, can you put your question in the chat and we can just have it asked? Or if we can get Anne off mute and let her ask the question.
Yeah, sure. Let me unmute her. Hi, Anne, you're unmuted. Or you can unmute.
Hi, Anne.
Oh, looks like you muted yourself again.
All right. And maybe you can type your question in the chat and we can read it out loud. All right. I'm going to move on a little bit. But Victoria, if we can get the question, please let me know. Okay.
For sure.
Thank you. All right. So we can get from 100 events, 10 alerts, one group of alerts, and that's how we can get to one incident. If we're doing customer service, let's drive the case out of it and notify our customers. I animated the slide, but it's the same arrow I drew. If I don't take advantage of all of that efficiency, maybe this case I have 10 alerts. If I did none of the event to alert process, well, then I have 100 incidents. Sorry. In this case, I have 10 incidents. If I don't do this, maybe I have 100 incidents when I could have had one. If we carry this end to end on the Now platform, we can actually proactively generate cases and incidents and let our users know that we're working on the problem before they tell us they have it. That's where I have customers getting to. All right. So I've been on slides now for 15 minutes. That's about the maximum I will let myself talk to with slides in front of me to everybody. I hope I haven't bored you too much. Let's take a look at how this looks on platform. We're here on Express List. So Express List is how we see alerts on ServiceNow, most common way. And we've already done our process of ingesting the events and deciding how we're going to pare those down to create alerts. And now we can see that we've allowed ServiceNow to start grouping those alerts based on rule sets. And there's a lot of different ways we can accomplish that. We talked about how confident we felt in the CMDB. I want to start with this group of alerts. It's a group of 10 alerts. I'll bring up my little side panel. But most key is that none of these alerts was I able to associate that with an impacted service or a configuration item within my CMDB. But I was still able to get all 10 of these grouped together. How was I able to do that? Well, we have what's called tag-based alert correlation. And these alerts contain information, whether it's directly in tags or tags we can create as they come in, that allow us to realize that they're in the same environment, production, that we're getting an alert on the same metric, service state, and that they're all in the same location, in the Americas in this case. So we're able to decide based on that information that these should be grouped together. And of course, that instead of having 10 incidents, we have one incident and allow one person to investigate what is seemingly one problem, not 10 individual problems. A different methodology of correlation. So this is more based on the CMDB. So we see a couple things here. For these alerts, I was able to bind these to a configuration item and figure out the impacted services. So that's pretty good. That's how I was able to get these together. I think if I was slick, I would have been able to figure out that VWin X42, VWin X42, and even Oracle at VWin X42 should have been grouped together. But I wouldn't have gotten Glassfish or Apache because I didn't know those were in any way related to VWin X42 without having built out the context in my CMDB. And we'll approach this from a different view and see how that was possible. The other thing that I notice here is I have two other alerts, groups of alerts, specifically related to ping time, that seem to be on the same services and CIs. So if I was an administrator, I would actually want to go back and see if maybe I could improve my event rules so I could get these 4 alerts added into this group and have a group of 9 instead of having just a group of 5 and 2 groups of 2. So it's always a little bit iterative, but we can continue doing great things and keep making things better. Let's come down here. If I need generative AI, and I want to understand more about what's going on, I can take that group of alerts and get a quick analysis, provide more information. Of course, sometimes if you're in a demo instance, the language model is generating an error. I'll retry once, but if not, I will have to troubleshoot that. Production, there we go. That does not happen on production instances. It's a demo instance thing. So it's telling me what's going on. They indicate reports critical disk usage. So I get an easier verbiage to read if I don't really understand what node view in X42 C colon below 15% is supposed to mean to me. Now, if I want to approach this from more of a services view, I can come over and look at what we call a service map. So I talked about building a CMDB. I talked about knowing whether things exist and then giving them business context. Our service map does just that. Guess I'll refresh it. All right, we'll try the big refresh button. Thank you. And so we start to see some of those same names that I was talking about before. View in X42, Glassfish. I think we saw the word Apache. And where did this word order status come from? Order status is a name made up by the business. It's a way to relate these objects, these API gateways, and this Redis database, and this Glassfish application server to the function it provides. And so in this case, somebody might call the help desk and say, I can't order anything, or I can't check the order status, or the ordering application is down. All of those help us relate what's going on in the real world to the alerts that we've seen on the platform. We can look at the details. We can see all of those related alerts. Now I'm able to group them all together related to this service. So I can see what's going on. And I can actually group them by the time they came in. Here we see an example of how health log analytics on ServiceNow is actually able to predict a problem before it occurs. These are occurring 12 and 11 minutes before there's an operational symptom in the environment. So in this example, I'm provided with a 10 to 15-minute head start to go fix a problem. Health log analytics is a purpose-built application set to take a baseline of your logs and find differences. And that will be covered in one of the 2 future webinars more in depth. A lot of different views we can do here. One of my favorites is actually the advanced view. So this is an older view of the service map. It doesn't have the cool wavy lines, but what it does have is the time bar. And the time bar is not in the new version yet, so I like to come back to the old version to do it. In my past operational life, I wanted to know one thing and one thing only when the world was broken. And it was, what did somebody do right around this time that caused my world to go from green to red? So in this view, I'm able to compare and actually see that somebody went ahead and updated this CI, actually this file, during that time frame. I can click through here, or I'm able to go back on platform and go to track configuration files. I can see that last one updated. We can hold a lot of these updates. Again, bringing some of that operational view into service. In this case, I just want to know what changed. So I'll quickly compare the current version to the last version. Hit the refresh button because sometimes this screen is not my best friend. And if this screen were to load like I wanted it to, it would be showing us that the file had changed with a very nice pink line pointing me to the change. Unfortunately, it just would like to laugh at me today. I apologize. We'll come back and check that in a moment. So I'm going to go back to Service Operations Workspace now. And I'm in my related records, my related alerts. That's where I was. I'm actually going to go quickly into a group of alerts. And within a group of alerts, I can actually attach playbooks. So I've got my incident that is associated with this group. There is definitely a stylistic debate. Do we expose these playbooks on the alert, or do we expose them on the incident? There's reasoning for both. But we're allowed to put playbook to determine the impact on either type of object, notify the business, and the most important part is automated remediations. So I can then take action to resolve the incident that we created from those 100 events that we started with. In this case, created an, let's see, did these load for me? No, not going to do it. What we would have seen is that somebody added a SQL trace line to the file. So we're logging more things. If we give it more disk space, that should temporarily solve the problem. So we can go ahead and run our expand disk space automation. And what we'll see as that runs is that the alerts start to close themselves. Our incident can actually resolve, and back to the services dashboard. In a moment, we should see this start to resolve itself. There we go. And our order status is back to green. All right. That concludes my portion of the demonstration. I think gonna go back to the slide deck for poll questions. Is that the next part of the plan, Victoria?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to answer a question.
No, you're fine. Should I can go back to the deck too. I think I
Oh,
still have.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Oh no, I always get confused on Zoom when it's like have multiple people share, because then they'll get confused on who to look at. Anyways, so as David said, one last poll question. Would you like to read it out, David?
Oh, after this presentation, do you now understand how event management process on ServiceNow is designed to help you? So in theory, the yeses should still say yes. If you went from yes to no, then that would be something I want to work to improve on. But past that, yeah, I'm hoping that I did a good job explaining. And so that is the purpose of the poll question. Thank you all so much. So far, I'm scared to say this, but 65 responses, and I have 0 no's. But oh, I got a no, and that is okay. Thank you, because I will strive to do better. And honestly, if you want to reach out in the chat, I'm happy to have a further conversation as well. Yeah, I think that's the end of David for this presentation, Victoria, unless you had something.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks so much, David. It looks like you did a really good job on explaining the value of what AIOps is and how it can reduce work and incidents for everyone who attended, except for that one person, sorry, who says that they still don't understand. And with that, let us hand it over now to KP.
Yeah. So perfect. My name's Carlos Peterson. I actually go by KP. I kind of get the Carlos, the Carlise. KP is, you can call me a few things. I'll probably respond. So definitely look forward to this last part. We're going to peel back the onion. We're going to spend time in product. But I think we do have a couple questions just to poll the audience. Let's go ahead and get into the first question. And do you understand how to get started with AIOps? So that's kind of a loaded question because there's, as David mentioned, there's multiple signals, right? Events is kind of what's been out there. Event management is nothing new. Some of the other signals, which will be covered around anomaly detection with raw signals like logs, is something that I would definitely not miss that future session. All right, it looks like we're getting some answers here, and that's why I'm here. All right, perfect. All right, so looks like we got a kind of a mix understanding. Obviously, today is kind of for event management. From event management perspective, let's do the next poll question. We'll jump right into the content real quick. And if you can progress the next one. And yep, here we've got, are you currently using the service operations workspace? So this is somewhat critical because the next experience, which is really nothing new, this has been introduced family releases ago. We're talking maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But the idea is that the service operations workspace is where we'll start to see an improved user experience, less clicks, and that's where the direction has been the direction of ServiceNow for all the various applications on the platform. So maybe we can get let's get a poll. What's the poll results on that? Victoria, what are we looking at there? If you want to. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, the folks said that I think this will be good to cover. Let me go ahead and close this up. I'm going to take over the share and let's jump in. All right. And what I'm going to do is replace the current share. And let's jump right into one slide. Let me just set the stage, so to speak. And really, for event management, we're going to kind of show you and try to simplify this into 4 buckets, right? So the first is ingestion, and how do we onboard, our various signals? Today is just event management, right? But even as you saw from that one previous slide from David, events with even ITOM professional, right? Our base entry level. You get more than just events. Events, if you think about it, in my perspective, I always say it's somewhat reactive. Something's already happened. As you start to get the raw telemetry or raw signals such as metrics, collecting metrics, whether that's through our own agent client collector or other, we also have metric connectors for Dynatrace and other tools like that. You can now start to understand where there are anomalies from a multivariate perspective. But that's a little beyond the scope of this next 30 minutes. But what we're going to talk about is our the ability to onboard the various signals, and that's through, for example, the service operations workspace and your role. Now, the beautiful thing is that the paradigm shift is not, we're not just limited to a centralized IT operations or event management team that has to kind of really control for the entire organization. With the rise of distributed teams, with the site reliability engineers, we can now provide, for example, a team lead to come in and say, hey, I don't want the IT friction to always request for another team to set certain things up. Maybe for my team, meaning that I'm a team lead, I care about, let's say you build it, you manage it from an SRE perspective. I'll use that loosely, but the idea is that you have a set of microservices that you're responsible for, and you want to bring in those signals. You want to then next really do a level of enrichment, right? Enrichment to us is we can now start to get, for example, events that come in, and we can now start to append, or think of it as enrichment. We're adding more context, more rich text, right? To give more understanding about this alert, more than the tool, right? Maybe I think I saw previous question is, well, what does event management do if I'm already managing these alerts in a monitoring tool itself? Well, we've got metadata, we've got service context, we've got routing information, we've got SLAs, et cetera, et cetera. So anything on the platform, whether that's within the configuration management database, right, the CMDB, if there's relationships, if there are related tables or custom tables, we can now easily start to bring that in and add it dynamically, very efficiently to the alerts, right? And that can be used for multiple things that we'll talk about, including we have the ability to normalize. David talked about this concept of alert tags. Alert tags, let's say an event source, Dynatrace, Datadog, right? They have a tag section that can be super useful, and we can normalize that so that If your CMDB is not complete, guess what? We can now start to correlate or cross correlate not only between multiple event sources, but also between alerts that have a CI with alerts that don't. And we can start to lean on those incoming, let's say, attributes, those key value pairs that are sent, for example, in a webhook. And we can now start to normalize something that represents an application, an environment, a location or region, within a cloud, et cetera. And that can be used for decoration, for filtering, for grouping, right, for correlation, which we'll talk about here next. Next, as I mentioned, is grouping. David showed you two different mechanisms, right? It's not just tags. There is a precedence order. There are a few things coming on the roadmap, which may be another session, but there is some real exciting ways to get started. And regardless of your CMDB maturity, that shouldn't be a barrier to entry. So we can now correlate using kind of this, think of it as time, text, or any kind of rich attributes or text that are coming along with the event payload or something in the platform, right? Again, we can use that as enrichment. And then if you have a sense of topology, right? Any kind of, even if it's a simple relationship or a bucket of CIs, we can now start to understand that blast radius. Is it a platform? Is it the production load balancers that are impacted, right? So that's where we can really start to lean on what's in the platform to understand how big of a problem it is and really what's the sense of urgency or priority to attack this. Now, one thing that, as things occur, we want to understand what's the cause of the problem, right? And probable root cause kind of goes back to the I would say the Gartner statement that's still so relevant today, right? 80-90% of the time when there's something that happens in the environment, it can be contributed or attributed to a change. So from our perspective, if you have changes in the platform, traditional changes that can also be surfaced as part of a correlation. So to give you an example, last night during a maintenance window, there was an update to a firewall. And then, the next day after the change window, we start to see some availability or performance degradation problems, right? We group those, surface up that, a percentage, there could be multiple possible root causes, but we will consider and lean on topology as well as changes as being the core cause. Now, we know that traditional changes is just a part of it. So probable root cause also goes to pipelines. So think of it, deployments that are happening multiple times during a day. Let's go back to the team lead. We've got microservices, and between deployment 6 and deployment 7, all of a sudden we see a problem. Well, we can then surface up even the change between those two deployments, right? That's a machine-to-machine change from, let's say, ADO, right? Azure ADO, and those deployments are being made. We have out-of-the-box integrations to create a change request and associate that with, let's say, a microservice or whatever's being configured, infrastructure as code from the pipelines, and that becomes another just hugely valuable way of identifying what's the cause, right? Okay, so last part, and then we're going to jump right into product. Let me just close this for a second, is really the response. So we talked about ingest, we're going to enrich, we're going to group, and now we're going to do some action. Now, automation is absolutely the DNA, or workflow is the DNA of the ServiceNow platform, right? That is done throughout all the applications, and it is just inherited with the common data model to be able to leverage metadata and then drive automation. And I think I put a link into our ServiceNow store. We have plus 220 out of the box, what we call integration hub spokes. Ansible, Chef, collaboration tools like Teams, Slack, etc. Right? There's a long list. Those can be leveraged as a way to go out and do something, right? So as we're correlating, we have metadata. We can be very data driven. We can have the right teams, notified or maybe assigned to, if it's actionable, assigned to an incident to swarm the issue. We can also either automatically or manually do some level of triage and remediation. Maybe, there's a failed control M job, and go grab the sysout from that job, add it to the notes or the activity of the correlated alert, and then maybe even to the incident if it's actionable, right? Just to give the people, if they're manually looking at something, give them more information so they can move or truncate those resolution times very quickly. And then I would say one of the biggest things, and you'll see this, is really because we have that common data model. And if you saw the one slide that was kind of based on the Gartner circa 2017 of when Gartner coined, it was actually Will Capelli, senior Gartner analyst that coined AIOps. And there were kind of core capabilities there. Well, we have that. And what drives that is the common data model in the platform. So insights, dashboards, it just becomes we get very valuable and I would say actionable dashboards that we can start to bring together, not just alerting and incidents, but changes and outages and problems. All that data is there and can be assimilated in a very meaningful way for various personas. All right. With that said, I'm going to jump in. So this is, again, the same service operations workspace. Think of it as, again, all users, whether you're an agent, major incident manager, maybe IT operations, or even a site reliability engineer, when you log in, you're going to the same place. But the difference is based on your role, you'll be seeing maybe the same problem through the optics or the lens of that persona. So you may see, as a site reliability engineer, maybe I'm currently in more as a event management, IT operations persona. But if I was looking at a problem, I would care about SLOs, error budget, SLIs, even though we're all looking at the same problem. And that's where the combination of ITSM and the operations side really comes together in a meaningful way. So what we're going to do is kind of start from the beginning, right? We talked about ingest. So we have on the left-hand side, and again, if you have a specific role, and it doesn't have to be limited to me being centralized. Remember, I'm the event management admin, but it could be that we're even a team lead, right? We've added the support and additional roles to not give the keys to the kingdom to maybe a team lead, but allow them to kind of do those 4 buckets very easily, because you want to really not have that friction between the ecosystem. So we just keep that in mind. So what we have out of the box, and we're trying to simplify and really, from an onboarding perspective, we have events, we have metrics, and we have logs. From an events perspective, we have a number of out-of-the-box integrations that within 5 minutes, you just click a tile. You can have multiple iterations, right? One for prod, one for dev, etc. And you can onboard very quickly based on our growing number of out-of-the-box connectors that we support, and we're always adding and enhancing. But many times you may find the ability to, or the need to kind of create your own integration. So that's what we're going to do right now. So what we have is the ability to create a custom webhook. A webhook is essentially, most modern tools, even scripts, pipelines, anything can send a JSON, right? Even if you integrate with modern tools like Teams or Slack, you typically, or even PagerDuty, you send, for example, a JSON format, and the receiver of that has kind of like a targeted webhook URL, and then they would process that to do something, right? In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to create and show you how easy it is to create a custom integration. So I'm going to click here. And just to give you a little bit of the experience, this is like a wizard. And once you create this once, you can export it and then onboard that to any other number of instances. So you wouldn't have to recreate this. So in this case, what I'm going to call this is our, I'm going to say this is our deep dive integration. We have the ability, we'll talk about tags, we'll see that, and we'll kind of get into it. But even as an entry point, right? I could say, hey, this is for certain customers. This is for anything that you want to come up with. In this case, I'll say location type. This is for branches. Let's say branch. Anything that could help with decoration, with also filtering and things of that sort. So in this case, I'll say prod. So as events hit this webhook that we're going to create, automatically we're putting the static, think of it as static enrichment, right? We're even way before we even start to look at the platform dynamically and things of that sort. And what we'll call this is, why don't we just call it networking, network? Yeah, why don't we call it networking as a source? A source just represents, for example, what is the tool, right? In this case, also, I'm going to say all groups, but this is where if I'm part of a support group, right, I want to limit this or allow the management of this integration for a specific team. That just kind of gives you a look and feel. Now, this is going to go straight to the instance. We also have the ability, we have mid servers, we're not going to spend too much time with that. Think of that as like an application or software that can do discovery, it can do automation. That's inside your network or within your private cloud or whatever, your ecosystem. In this case, we're just going to go basically cloud to cloud, or what I'm going to simulate is using Postman, so you can see exactly what we're doing here. Hey, you know what? I want to create a nice, cool little icon for our integration, and we say next. All right, at this point, we've kind of added some basic information, and now I've got to map it. This is where me as an SME, I understand what the tool is, or I'm working with someone. And what we're going to do here is gather real source events to define, right? So at this point, by clicking that, it's auto-generated that target URL. That will be essentially the URL with, we need a minimum, I would say, role or authentication, right? We need to provide some level of security so that not just anything can post to this, but that's, for example, defined either with, we support multiple mechanisms. We're going to use just basic auth with a single role, but that we also have the ability to use API, like an API key. We support, for various other integrations out of the box, like OAuth and things of that sort. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy the URL, and then I'm going to go and open up Postman. Postman is just so you can manually see. I just have, it doesn't matter what my payload is. This would be generated from the source, and I'm just going to paste in that target URL. And I've already set up my authorization. So I'm going to go ahead and say send. I can see I got a 200. So that means it's okay. Now I'm going to say, hey, go check for a raw payload that was captured by this targeted URL. So let's give it a second, and we should have that one raw JSON payload that we captured. And this is the point where we need some good music. But Dave, maybe you can sing. All right.
We don't want to like make them hear that. Just
You don't want that. All right. Sounds good.
The win is them not hearing me singing, really. I think that's probably what it is.
Awesome. All right. So here, if you notice, this is, and let me bring up my Postman so you can kind of validate, right? This was sent. And again, all I'm doing is simulating, but this could be a script, a pipeline. That could be another tool, maybe a custom tool. And there could be multiple events coming in, but I just, again, just to show you that exactly what was sent is now captured here as an example. So what we have to do, and it's just a one-time thing for custom tools, is to map out our just a couple fields, meaning that so that we know how to, what is the severity? Sometimes a severity could be error means critical, right? This is the ServiceNow side. In this case, this happens to be exactly the same. It could be an integer, right? Maybe a 1 represents critical and a 5 represents maybe more of an okay, or the reverse. And that's where you would have just some basic knowledge, or quite frankly, you could probably look at the docs of a tool to quickly understand how this needs to be mapped out. So all I'm doing here is mapping up the severity. The message key, this is just the deduplication key. So one thing that David talked about before is, hey, we're receiving multiple events that deduplicate to an alert, right? That's nothing, that's kind of table stakes in the event management side. But the idea is that as we track and we start to do analytics of an alert, so if you think a very simple example would be that, let's say CPU on a server goes 90%, which is critical, then goes to 90 or 85% to major, and then goes to critical and major. Those, and then clears. Those 5 events are still just one alert, but we track the entire life cycle, and that's typically by a message key. Now, for all the out-of-the-box integrations, we do that by we already provide this. So I'm just going to create this for your knowledge here. So this would be kind of unique, and typically we use we provide a best practice around that. Description, you can even notice sometimes it's actually trying to auto-populate these mappings as well, which is really easy, helping you kind of get to an endpoint. So I'm just going to add a couple things here. Our node, which represents, is this the actual host name? Let's say if a compute device, in this case, is networking, some kind of networking tool. Resource, let's go ahead and just do this real quick. Object type, and then type, we'll do class. All right, cool. That's about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and activate this. So again, we onboarded. Now this is, you can see it's changed to active. What I'm going to do is just switch over to events. And then we're going to go back to Postman. Let's just resend in that same alert, right? We should get a 200. Perfect. And then let me just refresh. Now, one thing within, there's a scheduled job here. What happens is that we start to track stats at each incoming integration. So within, we're not going to wait for this, but we start to look at just from this one ingest, in this case, deep dive, our custom tool, we'll start to which could be super useful, understanding what's the volume. And also we even start to suggest, for example, alert tags. Remember, the incoming alert, we can now say, hey, you can normalize some of those key value pairs, and here might be some suggestions. So we do that, we suggest that automatically, add an integration, which perspective, which is super useful. All right. Let's go back and let's take a look at this single alert. So I've got a live environment here, but what I'm going to do is let me just go ahead and change this to, let's say, the last 15 minutes. And then we should see, let's just go ahead and make sure we've got our integration here. Give it a second. Here we go. There's our networking. And then, in fact, if I do just quick refresh, and we should see our little icon come in as well. I'm all about the presentation value here. And then we'll kind of talk about what is happening even from an automatic perspective. So we go back to the last 15 minutes. Okay. All right, here it is. There's our icon. And in fact, what we'll do is let's go ahead and narrow this down so we can just see our one networking source, right? And so the idea is you can also create and predefine views and filters for various teams, right? So when they come in, they only see things that they really care about. Okay, so this is the alert we created. Now, let's take a look. If I click on, for example, the description here, I get this flyout. Now, if you notice, all we did was onboard the data. Now, we do start to provide some out of the box, what we call alert tags. So what you're seeing up here are essentially alert tags. And alert tags can be useful for multiple things. One, decoration, right? And we'll show correlation kind of next, right? We're still in the ingestion side, but if you notice, there's site, there's an IP address, environment. Some of the things that we placed in on the integration, right? The location type branch, the environment prod, right? We actually added those as static tags. But some of this, like location, right? Maybe my networking tool had no idea what the location was. Well, that's where the CMDB comes into play, right? There's no service maps, but because if I click on this, this happens to be an IP switch, right? Again, single pane of glass. If I look at the details here, these are attributes, right? Meaning that they're probably already predefined with out of the box ones with, for example, routing information. We've got location information. There can be custom attributes that's very common for organizations to do. But the idea is that we can now take, for example, that location very efficiently, right? We're not doing this externally where there's technical debt. We just can now add as many of this is kind of an out of the box one, right? Showing you that you can start to get value very quickly to decorate that. So the benefit there also is, a tag can be used decoration, kind of understand a little about maybe in this case a single alert, but also if we start to look at the location. Hey, I only care about things at that New York location. Now I can use that particular tag or a combination of those tags to start creating predefined filters, right? So that's where that can be very easy to leverage tags to have my way of very quickly finding, hey, do we have multiple issues maybe happening at a remote location or branch? Okay, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you what a branch outage would look like. Now, in this case, it's kind of like the show where you start to show how to build the cake, right? And then you have, for example, the cake already ready, taken out of the oven. Now, what we talked about was ingestion. We talked about the enrichment, and then I'm going to show you the correlation, and then I'm going to show you how we do the correlation. And this is using, for example, using a tag cluster, the alert tags to group these. And what we can quickly do is, in this case, there are 9 alerts that have been correlated together. I have a kind of a timeline I can look at, right, to see if there were multiple events. You would kind of see if if it, again, going back to the deduplication, if it was critical, major, clear, critical, we would see each of those breakdowns in the timeline. We also have the ability in this case to look at what we call the link view. The link view is, remember, maybe there are no relationships in the CMDB as a service map to kind of drive correlation, like you saw with David's one of those application services that he showed. But what this is really meant to do is provide a visualization, for example, of the correlation itself. So if we look here, the correlation is based on location. We're doing a branch outage. All of a sudden, we had a bunch of core routers, switches, firewalls, or a firewall that all kind of within a time frame had an issue. And this is where we can kind of see very quickly from a visualization how this was correlated, right? We had a bunch of devices, network devices, and then also, if you notice, we even highlight other metadata in the platform. There was a change. Oh, that's interesting. So if you notice here, the next thing is probable cause. Well, all right, well, what was that? Well, there could be multiple. In this case, there is a single change that was made. Maybe again, this is a traditional change as opposed to maybe a pipeline. And this was maybe made during a change window last night. Now, today, we're seeing some disruption and availability. Again, single pane of glass, right? Click on the change, right? It's not just surfacing up a change outside of the platform, but within a click, I can look at the change. I can look at the configuration item. I can look at any other data. Again, go back to the beautiful thing about the common data model is that we have that, and we can surface that up in a very meaningful way. So at this point, not to get into any of the process, but the idea is I've got information about the change. There's also, if you notice, if I go back to, I can look at it from multiple perspectives. Let me close this preview. We're also auto assigning, right? So under here, we're creating a single alert, not 10 separate alerts. There may be other, like, for example, we understand, we're being data driven in the sense that we want this to be auto routed. In this case, it's to the network team so they can see the full blast radius. We can also provide, if there was some sort of impacted service. Now, impacted service in this case could be, hey, these are regions. These set of branch offices are part of the Northeast hub. And that can also be super useful to provide visibility to, to maybe more executive types. Now, the beautiful thing with the Now Assist, for example, is to be able to provide a summary of those, of the issue itself, which you saw earlier with David and things of that sort. So, okay, let's kind of review real quick. We had, in this case, we had a cluster of alerts that were correlated based on one or more attributes, right? And we can always check exactly how that was specifically done within the activity of the think of it either at this what we call the secondary alerts or this correlated or grouped alert, and it'll tell us exactly, for example, in that visualization, or probably click here. In this case, you can see, it's using some tag clustering group called branch outage. All right, well, let's kind of peel back the onion just for a minute, and then we'll kind of finish off this section. But if you notice here, if I have the role, I'll have this alert automations. So the alert automations really allows either the event management team or even team leads to come in and kind of very quickly create kind of some logic. And we're expanding this, right? We're trying to make it super easy for and very intuitive to understand how to do certain things, very common event management things, right? One could be ignore, hey, certain types, you can use Boolean logic. These types of, let's say, criteria that we see in alerts, just ignore them. Throw them to the bit bucket. We don't want to process those if they can't be controlled at the source. Enrichment really becomes an easy way to now start to transform the data itself. So, for example, if I were to create an automation, let's just show you how easy this is. So this is, I want to modify something about the event. Maybe some kind of housekeeping. So let's just call this actually network uh, alert normalization, and doesn't matter. And so in this case, we're going to use our um, in this case, I have a demo, which is essentially the same. So immediately, if you notice, it will go out and pick, the raw events that have come in. So now, I could do things very simply from regular expression, maybe something that's not a core alert field, something here, maybe there's tags that we see. So in this case, let's keep it simple. I want to take let's say the check, and I'll say SW check. And, at this point, I can have a simple regular expression. In this case, I'm just going to use a very simple greedy one just for time's sake. And I can now validate that. Oh, cool. Well, whatever that regular expression I want to parse out, I want to maybe create another tag. In this case, let's call this webinar, right? And that's going to be a new key. Guess what? I want to create that as a tag, which then can be used for decoration, filtering, grouping, as well as downstream, maybe something for downstream. So very quickly, I've done that. It's validated my regular expression, showed me the value. Well, let's see what there's more than those alerts. Obviously, this is a pretty greedy regular expression, but to show you that, hey, for all the alerts that have been sampled, looks like I've got a hit. So very easy to do some, if you almost put it in the space of the ETL, the transformation. I want to go ahead and kind of maybe parse or create new variables for a number of things. So now what I could do is take this, any number of fields or keys that I'm creating dynamically, and I can start to alter. Maybe housekeeping is, what, I really like, the descriptions for our operators. I want to do, I want to have the node, right? I could say in this case, we know the node automatically comes in from the event. I want to use some static characters, and then I want the description. So I'm kind of preceding the description with something. It could be a combination of any keys that I'm already creating, or something that's coming to the event, and then I just want to write over, for example, the description. So this is just to show you that now I can start to transform very easily in a UI, super simple, validating what I'm doing, and I can now start to modify, for example, the description. I want to have in brackets maybe the name of the switch or the router, and then the description. But it can be anything, right? And you can do that for any of the alert keys itself. So that is just to show you how easy it is, and if you've had some experience, working outside event rules, event field mapping, alert automation in the past with ITOM Health, you got to be using this, and we're probably at that 80% of really trying to migrate all of that functionality, the event management process, all in alert automations, to simplify, improve the experience. And really, if someone were to pick up from what, maybe pick up after another resource leaves, it just makes it super simple to follow. Oh, I see what they're trying to do. I can validate that. Let me validate this against all of the criteria that this enrichment is meant for. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Don't need to save it. Now the big thing is the grouping, right? So we talked about the onboarding, which we did. We showed how easy it is to create a custom integration. We showed some level of enrichment, and now, grouping. So Some of this will be enhanced with all of our techniques, but if you remember, we had one that was called branch outage. So in our case, the way that we can configure any type of tag-based clustering is we can create what is referred to as a tag-based clustering definition. So what we've done research is that one of these tag-based clustering definitions, right, which doesn't require you to have a CI in the CMDB, right? If you do, we have the flexibility to correlate alerts that have a CI with alerts that don't, right? This is and where you do have a CI that has maybe some relationships to an application service, you can show that blast radius. So you have the flexibility, and you have more of a deterministic approach, but in many cases, you can meet a lot of specific use cases for various teams. So in this case, that's where you can create your criteria. Think of what are the alerts that are even going to be considered for this correlation. Now, typically we don't want to correlate just a single source, right? We want to do cross-domain, cross-tool correlation. So it could be, other logic, anything in the alert, anything in those key value pairs, or anything that we're doing in the enrichment, right? To kind of to correlate that. For example, a good example, I worked with a customer. They use Control M for batch jobs, and they also have other monitoring tools for the compute systems. And there is a lot of if batch job 1 doesn't complete, then batch job 2 will be impacted, and batch job 3. And there's no relationships, there's no service map, but we can use tag base very easily to use, for example, the schedule name, and then put a time frame, which I'll show you. But that's just a very easy way to start to use the alert attributes or enrichment to really meet or cluster things in a meaningful way. So in this case, we're just saying source coming from demo, right? That was equivalent to those networking, that custom integration. So that's just to be what's considered. Now, where the clustering, super simple, is we're saying, what's that? Remember, there's an aspect of a correlation time. In this case, we're saying 30 minutes. It could be 3 hours, right? Again, a more deterministic approach. And then here is where we're saying based on location, right? We've already created an alert tag based on the CI, or any number of alert tags that we're using a combination of something in the platform or something that's coming in from the event payload. And it doesn't have to be an exact match. We can do a fuzzy match, and that's using a Levenstein algorithm. So if, hey, you know what, maybe we've got multiple event sources, and the application name isn't perfect. It'll handle camel case versus lowercase, but maybe there's an extra character at the end, and we can actually put, like, for example, a 90%, I would say a 90% similarity. In this case, we can keep it simple and do an exact match. So again, one of these definitions is equivalent to like 300 correlation rules, right? And all we care about is the similarity of the value of that key. And we're not limited to one, right? We can say, hey, we want location, we want maybe location type. Remember what we created from the integration itself. We want those, maybe there's branches, maybe there's other values too. So you can now start to add one or more tags or alert fields. There are other options as well that we can use to correlate, right? So very, very easy from that standpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. Now, there is an order. There is and we'll get to that. But one thing is, once you kind of build out your logic, what I'm going to do is, as I talk through this, I'm just going to refresh because I made a couple changes. Let's go back to the default. One thing, as you make your logic, you want to be able to test that. And this is where we added this. Think of it as a simulation, a what if tool right within the alert automation. So I've created this. I know I want to do a location. All right, take a look either at the last day, data that's already in the platform. In this case, let's look at the last 24 hours and let's go ahead and test the automation. So in this case, what it should do is there's 9 alerts and 1 matching. So in this case, it will then give you the results. In this case, it's a perfect hit. It'll give me the specific alert that would have been created. So this is just another way of kind of playing around or tuning, right? A specific use case that's a more deterministic approach and a really easy way to get started and to meet any kind of use case. So again, most customers may have only 6 or 7 across the entire enterprise number of tag correlation groups, and then they can use something like the CMDB as a secondary, as a catch-all, so to speak. But very, very easy to get started and kind of core capabilities.
Hey, Carlos, I just wanted to let you know there's less than 7 minutes left.
Yeah. All right. Let's from that perspective, let's go ahead and get back into the presentation. Hopefully you've got enough, at least some interest to see. And I would say the last piece, just to kind of finish off on the fourth bucket, is the ability to do some sort of action. That's where you can, how do you want to create incidents? How do you want to do notifications? How do you want to do integrations with, let's say, a PagerDuty, or go ahead and kick off either automatically or provide the operator the ability to manually kick off some sort of triage or remediation. And that's all in this respond area. So super easy to get started, on board, get enrichment. We have out of the box context. You can use that as an example to further do enrichment as well, grouping, and then finally some sort of triage or remediative action, all right here in the alert automation. So super simple. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a deeper look into some of the capabilities and the simplicity. And obviously I started off with the dashboarding. These are just ones I've created. Super easy to start mixing and matching all the valuable metadata and data within the platform and bring it into a very meaningful way. So that's where our platform analytics are. It's just a platform capability. You start to bring your data alive, right? You're not just looking at things in a stove or in a silo or stove standpoint, but super useful. So Victoria, I'm going to kick it back to you if you want to take over, and hopefully that was useful, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Carlos, for that. That was a really great deep dive on how straightforward and simple it is to actually get started with event management, specifically AIOps in ServiceNow. So I don't have a poll question like we did for David earlier, but in any case, I hope that if you didn't understand how to get started with AIOps before Carlos's demo, I hope you understand now. And I'm just going to assume all those thumbs up mean that you did understand. So keep them coming. That being said, we have a few new events or a few more events coming up. Like I mentioned, a few more AIOps Power Hours that if you haven't already signed up for, I do welcome you to sign up for them. As well as we have some upcoming sorry, I was also looking for the chat, webinars talking about what's new for the Q1 store release in Yokohama. So if you haven't already signed up for these, sign up for them in the link that I provided below, which are, again, live on ServiceNow webinars. And we'll also be having some AIOps office hours in April as well, which will have the ITOM product management team on it. So if you have any questions that you need to ask product management, feel free to join that as well. And just like last year, some of you may have met some of these people in person, including myself. We held some in-person AIOps workshops and we'll be hosting them again in 2025. We're still working on confirming the dates, and keep an eye on this blog that I posted right here in the chat as well, and check back every so often to see what cities will be attending this year. And again, if you want access to the recording in about a week from now, it will be available on this blog post in community as well. With that being said, it is now time for live Q&A. And if you don't have any questions for live Q&A, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you come back for the next AIOps webinar, AIOps Power Hour, in about a week from now. Actually, exactly a week from now. But thanks again for attending.